with the new changes that are coming down the pike, finally, from the NAR settlement, this is the time that we need to speed things up. We need to understand what buyer broker agreements are and what they're all about. How are they going to affect the industry? How is this going to differentiate you from the other agents that are out on the street? What we're going to talk about today and break it all down is going to cover the key parts, the benefits, and what these new rules are going to mean for each of us. So whether you are a seasoned agent or whether you're just getting started and you're just appreciating the show, thanks for being here. We're going to help you stay ahead of the competition, and we're going to keep your clients smiling. So first and foremost, what is a buyer broker agreement? So what this agreement is, simply put, is the buyer agency agreement that has always been in place in Florida, but was of optional use. This is the contract between a buyer client and a real estate agent that says, hey, I know you're my agent and you're going to help me buy a home. That's simple. It's going to underline the duties and the responsibilities of a buyer's agent, and it's going to ensure that you have the proper representation so that the buyer gets the best interests completed throughout the home buying process. It's going to outline how the real estate agent's compensation, which is now where things are going to start getting tricky because of the NAR settlement, and it's going to provide the extra layer of transparency for the client, and it's going to solidify the payment for how the agent gets all of their compensation awarded to them. Bottom line is that a buyer broker agreement is going to ensure that the buyer receives a dedicated representative and a support from their real estate agent, and understand that this real estate agent is going to get paid for their services. We're not going to talk about how they're going to get paid because there are multiple options, and it has always been negotiable. Unfortunately, because of the settlement, we've had to put it a little more basic to our clients out there. We've had to put the clients in a position of, maybe you didn't understand what I said. Don't work for free. My knowledge does not come to you at the expense of necessarily someone else. We are going to talk about who is willing to pay for my services, but you need to understand before we even look at the first house together that I expect my services at a certain value that we are going to agree to together will be negotiated throughout this practice to make sure that you understand I am not a free agent. There are different types of buyer broker agreements out there, but I will tell you from the Keystone standpoint, we are a transaction brokerage. Every brokerage that does not claim themselves to be otherwise is a transactional brokerage by default. We stick to that. We believe that it's got the minimal amounts of liabilities for our agents, for our clients, for our consultants, and for, most importantly, the transaction itself. But we still have to understand that because these are exclusive agreements, that we need to know that there's a little bit different flavor for each. They come in essentially two forms: exclusivity and non-exclusivity. Knowing which type of agreement best suits your business. You may have some clients under these new conditions that want to get even more exclusivity out of their agent, and we certainly have that capability. So the exclusive side of the agreement is going to be buyer commits to only working with you as their agent. Great. That's a good relationship on both sides. You can devote more time and your effort to finding the right property for your client this way, and you can guarantee that they're not out on Zillow looking for whichever next agent is going to pick up the phone and is competing for them as a lead instead of competing for them as a forever client. Next, if you sell a client a home during the buyer's agreement contract term, you are owed commission as outlined as in this agreement. Again, this has never been a surprise. Real estate agents do not work for free. We have always been included in a commission conversation. Maybe it hasn't been transparent enough, right? I certainly can't control all of the agents out there. Commission comes up in every single one of my negotiative conversations with my clients. They need to know how I expect to get paid, what I expect to get paid, and that I will not work for less. Non-exclusive agreement side of the house means that the buyer could work with multiple agents, which is what you had before. Without this contract in place, essentially, think of it from a legal standpoint, I could go out there and work with 14 or 15 different lawyers until someone captured the result they were looking for. In this aspect, it would have been exactly that in the good old days, meaning yesterday. A buyer could work with as many agents as they wanted and be looking at multiple houses, and then sometimes put all of us in a very difficult ethical position of competing against each other on the very same house, which is why we have laws of intent that we needed to follow. But if buyers view specific properties with you, they must conduct a transaction using your services. Agreements can vary by state, obviously, but Florida, we're going to be utilizing the agreements that come directly from the Florida Realtors Organization. These are the agreements that they have decided are in the best interest and the best protections of the consumer in the entire state. There's no guarantee that the client will end up using you as the agent in the long run. There is no, I am the only agent you could ever use if you don't sign an agreement. And you want to make sure that you're limiting the competitions for your side as the agency. And that's how business should always be done. Once we get through the interview process, when we are talking to a client and we begin the initial portion of building the relationship, we have agreed to work together. That's it. It should be exclusive until which time either I cannot find you the house you want or help you procure a house that you want under your terms, or vice versa. I decide as an agent, you and I are not compatible in a business relationship and we should not work together, which is how every business relationship is done. What is the importance of this? Why are we doing it? I have been asked countless times why brokerage agreements are so important. And in the past, I typically used them whenever I needed to set my clients down and have a real heart-to-heart on, we have now seen 20, 30, maybe even 40 homes together. And I am getting the impression that you're either not taking the process seriously or professionally, you just like the window shop. And I need to sit you down and understand that I am going to get paid for these services, that if someone else doesn't pay me, you will be paying me. And here's the agreement. My response is always going to be to tell the buyer, essentially, how are you going to work together? Set those expectations up front. How long? What are you going to do for them? And how are you going to get paid? And how much you expect to get paid for this? This is going to ensure, honestly, that everybody is on the same page. I love the transparency aspect of this. The buyer-broker agreement that has been put together now with some of the newer language, essentially, to protect the NAR settlement scenario, is going to make the whole real estate process flow more smoothly. I'm going to break these down. I'm even going to give you examples of how you can give a more layman's conversation to your client so that they understand it. Again, they have had this relationship with you forever, since the beginning of real estate. The difference is the transparency and the forced additional documentation that the client is going to now need to sign to say, hey, not only do we have an agreement, not only do you understand I get paid for my services, but this is an agreement that dictates that you're going to sign on the line that says I can enforce my commission for our working together. So let's get into the benefits and the protections. Buyer-broker agreement is in the best interest for you and your client. For you, it means guaranteed compensation for your hard work as long as you procure a home together. And the time that you're going to be working to build the trust and the security for your clients is going to build that forever clientele that you truly needed to be doing in real estate since the beginning. It's going to make sure your client has clear understanding of your services. The property searching, the market analyses, the negotiations, the offering, the handling of paperwork should be all well documented and well explained in the agreement. How many times have you guys wasted effort putting on the internet, here is all of the things that I am doing for you that you can't do for yourself? By the way, I'll talk about FSBOs in a minute. The only difference between today and tomorrow is that FSBOs have already existed. These are people that either didn't understand why they need to be working with an agent. 85% of those people do come to an agent before they end up selling their home, or people that had a horrible experience from an immature or from an inexperienced agent in prior life, and they want to make sure that they don't repeat that again. We're going to talk about how you can capitalize on that scenario too, simply by doing your job better and showing that you've got the salt to do your job properly. The benefits of these kind of things are simple. It gives them the dedicated professional support, and honestly, this is exactly how I'm going to present it to my clients. It's going to save you time, it's going to save you money, and it's going to save you stress, because you know I work for you on day one. I am your dedicated broker, realtor, agent. It's going to build the security and the trust between the buyer and you as the agent, principal, and the brokerage. It's also going to guarantee that the agent has to work diligently on behalf of the buyer. No longer are you going to be able to sit around buyer's agents and just wait for them to send you a bunch of Zillow pics of their favorite houses. You're going to have to get out there and truly do the job you're supposed to. These are going to allow you to clarify the expectations properly and the responsibilities of both you and the client. And client, hold your agent responsible to these expectations. You have a need that needs to be met. You're hiring them to help you meet that need. And honestly, it reduces the likelihood of misunderstandings and should minimize disputes in the long run. A buyer's broker's agreement is great. It's truly going to set clear roles, clear responsibilities for everybody. And yeah, I'm looking at you, agents. There are a few of you out there in the world that could use a good reminder on what your job is and what your responsibilities are to your clients. You're not only going to need to step it up, but now you are legally bound by an agreement on very day one that you owe them your time and your energies, that you're just not out there circling the bowl trying to find as many customers as possible to keep them all to yourselves so that nobody else can work with them. This is a dedicated responsibilities agreement, so be prepared to do the job you're signing up for. It's not only going to be committed to their best interest, but it's going to offer loyalty. It's going to offer confidentiality in certain aspects in a single agent agreement, and it's going to add that complete transparency about the properties that are on the market. For you agents, it's going to ensure that the buyer works exclusively with you, until which time the buyers. This is going to avoid conflict of interest. It's going to avoid ethical dilemmas that we run into, and it's going to stop a lot of that back and forth that we have as agents trying to compete against the same sale. In a market in Florida where we have limited amounts of properties and a very short amount of time to sell them, this is an important growth for what we've been doing for many, many years. It will guarantee that we get paid for our services and that there is no question at the closing table why we're getting paid what we're getting paid. So let's talk about the issues that are avoided with this agreement a little bit too. Without the buyer's brokerage agreement in place, I can tell you there have been several issues that have arisen and that has always complicated the home buying process. Miscommunication being number one. There has always been misunderstanding about the services that the agent's going to provide, the buyer's expectations. It leads to frustrations on both sides. They don't understand who works for who's doing what, that both of you can fire each other. These are all things that come to head when frustrations are not managed appropriately. Conflicts of interest. A buyer in the beginning could have worked with multiple agents until you get them in front of this agreement that has always existed. Now we are putting this agreement in place on day. They need to interview you appropriately. They need to agree that you are the right personality for them and their family, and you're going to be able to work with them through the procurement of their new home. It's going to eliminate that whole lack of commitment problem, right? The broker always felt, and the agent, they never really felt fully committed because they didn't know whether the buyer was either. They didn't know whether the buyer was going to switch to another agent at any time. Some Zillow agent was going to pick up the phone, or some Realtor.com agent was going to pick up the phone and decide that, hey, here's a fresh lead. And hey, if you don't have an agreement with the agent you're already working with, I can still talk to you and let's see what happens. And let's face it, If they're hungrier than you and they pitched your client harder than you, they're going to win you.